it's time to go back in there and climb this ladder, get better. And you see it, man, I'm evolving. We're not defined by how we lose, but how we get up and we overcome that, you know? And that's a Mexican heart for you.
And I promise you guys, I won't let you guys down. Never.
Yair, el Pantera Rodriguez!
Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez, the ultimate fight breakdown. On July 16th, a crucial fight for the future of the featherweight division is going down. Number 2 versus number 3. Two of the most exciting fighters in the division. BJJ ace Brian T-City Ortega faces Taekwondo practitioner El Pantera Yair Rodriguez. The winner of this fight is probably one fight away from a title shot, and the only reason why they wouldn't be in line for an immediate title shot is because they both lost their last fights against the men competing for the belt, Volkanovski and Holloway. This is definitely a matchup to look forward to. So without further ado, we here at Athlete Central are here to tell you everything you need to know about it in this ultimate fight breakdown.
They're gonna throw another big shot. Oh, nice body kick. One more flurry. Oh, wow, big right.
Recent fights. Let's start off with Brian Ortega, who suffered a pretty brutal loss to Max Holloway back in 2018. The Hawaiian was exceptional in this fight, setting numerous records for strikes landed in UFC history. Ortega was getting pieced up and almost looked unrecognizable at the end of the fight when the doctor stopped it between the 4th and 5th rounds. Despite landing 2 takedowns, Ortega was unable to do much in the stand-up against Max, suffering the first defeat of his career. Brian took a 2-year layoff after this brutal defeat, changing some of his coaches in order to develop a more well-rounded skill set. His return fight was against the Korean zombie, Chang Sung-young. Ortega was actually an underdog in this fight, but he dominated from start to finish. T-City landed 3 takedowns in the fight and knocked the zombie down twice. The second knockdown was essentially what determined the outcome of the fight. He landed a beautiful spinning elbow that rocked Zombie, and the Korean looked slow and disoriented for the rest of the fight.
Now the Korean zombie's having the better. Oh! Spinning elbow!
It's happened again!
Ortega took a clean sweep on all of the scorecards, winning all 5 rounds unanimously. Ortega's last fight was extremely entertaining, his title challenge against champion Alexander Volkanovski. T-City was being outstruck by the Australian at the beginning of the fight, but his shining moment came later on. Brian managed to secure a deep guillotine that actually changed the color of Volk's face. Somehow the champ survived that, and then another triangle attempt. Later in the 4th round, Ortega was getting beat up by Volk to the point where the ref was considering stopping the fight before the beginning of the 5th. Ultimately, Ortega carried on and actually managed to win the last round, but it wasn't enough though, and Alex defended his title successfully.
And still!
Moving on to Yair, he also fought against the Korean zombie, but back in 2018. The fight was extremely competitive and mostly took place in the feet. Chang Sung-young was winning on the scorecards entering the 5th round, having gotten the edge in the extremely close rounds, mostly outstriking Yair by a margin of 7 in each round at the most. It looked like the Korean was headed for the win when the fighters decided to stand and bang in the center of the cage, which gave us this beautiful knockout, which was voted as the best KO of 2018. As the 2 men were swinging, Yair ducked under and landed an upward elbow to knock Young out cold and move closer to title contention. Yair was next scheduled to face Jeremy Stephens, but the fight ended 15 seconds in with an accidental eye gouge from Yair. The fight was rescheduled less than a month later, and the 2 men faced off, surprising the fans with a grapple-heavy fight. Rodriguez won the first 2 rounds hands down, outstriking Stephens at an almost 4-to-1 ratio, and having over 3 minutes of control time, there were actually calls for a 10-8 in the 2nd round. Stephens actually managed to come back and dominate the 3rd round, controlling Yair on the mat for the majority of the round and landing 2 takedowns. But it was not enough to get the decision, and Yair walked away with the win. Yair's last fight was against Max Holloway, and it was a real treat for the fans. Rodriguez went toe-to-toe with one of the best strikers in the UFC and left it all out there in the cage. The fight was voted as the 3rd best fight of 2021, and for good reason. Yair was really dangerous on the feet and won the 1st round. Holloway won the 2nd, but after sensing the danger of El Pantera, made an adjustment in his game plan. Holloway chose to grapple in the 3rd and 4th rounds, amassing over 5 minutes of control time in those 2 rounds and winning them quite comfortably. Yair managed to win the 5th round in the eyes of many, but still lost the decision to Max.
Max Blast Holloway!
His stock undoubtedly rose after that fight though. Attributes. Both fighters are entering the prime of their careers. Ortega is 31 and Rodriguez is 29, so they will remain contenders for years to come. Yair definitely has the size advantage as he is the taller man by 3 inches, being 5'11", compared to Ortega, who is 5'8". El Pantera also has a 2-inch reach advantage, having a 71-inch reach compared to Ortega's 69. Striking. We expect Yair to have an edge in the striking department and Ortega to outclass him in the grappling. Yair lands 4.65 significant strikes per minute, but Ortega is surprisingly not far behind, landing 4.15 per minute. When it comes to accuracy though, Yair has a clear advantage, being at 45%, which is expected given the level of Yair's striking. The big discrepancy between the fighters comes in the defense category. Rodriguez absorbs 4.09 significant strikes per minute, which is still a bit high given that striking is his bread and butter. However, Ortega absorbs a whopping 6.69 significant strikes per minute, so it is safe to say his fights against Holloway and Volkanovski did not do him any favors, as he absorbed 504 strikes in those 2 fights alone. Ortega defends 49% of strikes attempted against him, while Yair defends a solid 53%. In terms of power, Yair also has the clear advantage. 6 of his 13 wins have come via KO/TKO, with 3 of those being in the UFC. Only 3 of Ortega's 15 wins have come via knockout, but all of them have been in the UFC. It is clear that Yair bests Ortega in all departments, but it's key to mention that Ortega's striking has improved significantly since his 2-year layoff. Grappling. We expect Ortega to have an advantage in this department. The fighters actually land the same amount of takedowns. Ortega lands 0.87 takedowns per 15 minutes, and Rodriguez lands 0.86. Surprisingly, Ortega also lands his takedowns with less accuracy, having a measly 24% takedown rate, while Yair is marginally better at 28%. But it is important to keep in mind that 8 of Yair's 9 takedowns came in his first 5 fights. He has only landed 1 takedown in his last 6 when he started facing top-tier competition. So when it comes down to takedown defense, El Pantera also has a small advantage, defending 60% of takedowns compared to Ortega's 54%. Although Brian does like to take the fight to the ground given his BJJ credentials, he doesn't mind fighting off of his back, so conceding takedowns can sometimes work to his advantage. Speaking of BJJ, obviously Ortega attempts more submissions per 15 minutes, up at 1.2, but Yair surprisingly isn't that far behind, attempting 0.8 per 15 minutes. In terms of completion, Ortega is way more prolific, winning 7 of his 15 fights by submission, with 3 of them coming in the UFC. His go-to is the triangle choke, hence T-City, but he also has a mean guillotine as well as a rear naked choke. Yair has had 3 victories via sub, with all of them outside the UFC, an armbar, a triangle choke, and a rear naked choke. Prediction? There are many ways that this fight could go down. Both fighters are elite at 145 pounds, and it is definitely going to be one to watch. Ortega's main weapon is his submission game, but as we saw from the statistics, T-City struggles to get the fight to the ground. His BJJ is exceptional, but his wrestling needs some work. Since his 2-year layoff though, he has shown improvements in all aspects of his game, and landed 5 takedowns in his last 2 fights. So he might be successful against Yair. Ortega has also improved his striking, and he showed that in his fight against the Korean Zombie, someone Yair was struggling against until getting the knockout with 1 second left in the fight. Even though his striking is nothing to be scoffed at, his submissions are his most dangerous asset, something he has used to get out of many sticky situations throughout his UFC spell. Yair's method of victory definitely lies in the striking department. He has a very diverse skill set and also packs a punch. His power doesn't wane after the first round, unlike some other UFC fighters, so once they get into the deeper rounds, Yair definitely still has the potential to end the fight. The Mexican has a reach advantage, and given his large arsenal of kicks, if he uses his tools correctly, he will control the distance at which this fight plays out. One thing he does have to worry about is Ortega potentially catching a kick and taking the fight to the ground, where he is the most dangerous. Yair has never been submitted though, so this should be a very exciting matchup. Rodriguez fought Holloway to a close decision and even made the Hawaiian grapple, so his striking pressure will definitely be a problem for T-City. Given the fact that Ortega has more ways to win, the bookmakers also favor him over Yair, pitting him as a -160 favorite, while the Mexican is a +140 underdog. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Who would you guys put your money on? Drop your fight predictions in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe to never miss an Athlete Central video. Until next time.